Hello, everyone. I have some further concerns regarding XDefiant. Before I can get into that, I need to just kind of lay things out. Okay, I have talked to other content creators, veterans from past betas, and a couple of legal people that they knew. I did this because I wanted to confirm my understanding of the NDA when it comes to the XDefiant beta. As it states, you're not allowed to share or talk about anything within XDefiant, so that means surely I can talk about general things not specific to it. My understanding is I can. If this is the wrong take on the rules, then Ubisoft or another entity is more than welcome to reach out to me and let me know what it is. Should it reach that point, I want it to be very clear that I've done everything I can to follow the rules and make sure I'm following the rules. If it gets to that point, it's also more of a problem from them than it is me. Ubisoft and many other major game companies make it impossible to ask those kinds of questions, or for that matter, share feedback. So yeah, they've made this impossible on me, to a point where I've had to go and talk to legal people and content creators, which shouldn't happen. It should come from them. But anyways, that brings me to the first part. I want to rant a little bit about the NDA. I can understand NDAs if it's a technical test or an alpha, because at that stage, you're not really sure if the game's going to work, and for that matter, you don't know if it's going to progress to the beta stage. There's always a chance that a game will be, plugged or unplugged. There's always a chance for a game to be unplugged at those stages. Once you reach the beta stage, though, that chance becomes a lot slimmer. Assuming it's coming from a major company. If it's like a Kickstarter, then okay, I can understand there being still a high chance of it being unplugged, just because of the fact that Kickstarters are more reliant on donations. That said, here's my reasoning for that. It's because with how much social media there is and all the other stuff that has gone on in the last couple of years, you're missing an opportunity to get the game out there to people. Not only are you preventing your own community from talking about the game and sharing their excitement for it, or whatever it may be, you're also preventing those esports players and streamers from also doing the same thing. Essentially, you're limiting the ability to advertise that game. As a matter of fact, there are people I've talked to who don't even know what XDefiant is. And I can completely understand why they don't know about it, because I had to learn about it from news related to your website, well, Ubisoft's website, and also from YouTube channels mentioning that there was going to be an XDefiant game coming out. I learned it from, I think it was GameStop and Exclusive Aces channel. So yeah, you are limiting yourself quite a bit. That brings me to a rant related to it. As I understand it, there are some game companies or developers who have a reason for doing this. It's because they don't want their the metrics to be tanked. I think what they're referring to is the Steam store page. There's a lot of people who will downvote something over complete nonsense. For example, you have people that will buy an early access and it doesn't work the way they thought it would, and then they get upset about it. Well, that's on them more than the game developers, because they fail to recognize it's early access or beta. I mean, that's really what early access is a beta. So if they don't understand that this is a beta and things aren't going to possibly work the way they want to, then that's on them more so than the game developers. Sure, there's a lot of work ahead for that particular game, but it's really unfair to get onto a game for that so early on. If it was full retail, I can understand people not having a like for the game because of it not reaching their expectations. that's perfectly understandable because, at that point it's full retail and the game's fully done. There's no work left to be done on it. Well, other than patches and things, but yeah, you get my point. This is kind of something I was saying in regards to my channel as well as other websites like Newegg and Amazon. I will, generally speaking, ignore Amazon Newegg reviews for a reason. It's because a lot of these people that post these reviews either just got a bad unit, which happens all the time. I mean, it's certainly rare in the overall percentage, but it does happen to people now and then. If you get a bad unit, don't hate the company for that. It's just a bad unit. Send it back, do an RMA, and if it's still bad, okay, now you've got a reason to hate the company for it. Completely understandable, but yeah, just getting onto it for one dead on arrival unit, not reasonable. It's the same logic I have with my YouTube channel and the store Steam pages. There's a reason I didn't make it possible to see the likes and dislikes for the longest time when I was new to the whole idea of making this YouTube channel. It's because I recognized the metrics and I recognized how lazy the downvote button is. People will be like, oh, why is that? Well, here's why it is. You see, there's going to be a lot of people, not just in game forums, but other topics as well, that will read like the first 2 sentences and then completely skip over everything after that. Because they didn't fully read the thing, they're not going to fully grasp what it is you're trying to say. So to me, it's unfair to get a downvote simply because somebody didn't take the time to fully understand what I was trying to say. There's good examples of this in other categories too, if you really want to pull from that. Just look at the whole Gamers Nexus video on where to place your liquid cooling unit within the case. Well, people took it and ran with it without really comprehending what Steve was trying to say. Eventually, Jay's 2 Cents did make a Too Long Didn't Read video on it, and from there, people started to understand. But it goes to show that you do have people like that in all aspects, not just computers, but the reviews, the game. So yeah, if you're really that worried about the metrics, my suggestion to YouTube, Steam, or whatever, is to require comments for the downvote, and then take that a step further by making sure it's reviewed. So a person clicks the dislike button, it asks for a reason, and then it goes into review. If it's complete and utter crap, then it should be dismissed and thrown in the trash. But if it's a well thought out dislike, then it should be approved. I can say personally, me as a person who's not really taking this seriously, well, not seriously in the sense of, like, I want to become like, the next 1 million subscribers YouTube channel, but I am taking it seriously in the fact that it's more or less my blog and I want to create quality content for people to learn from. In that regard, to me personally, the dislike button means something else. It completely eliminates my chance of getting to have a conversation with a person that dislikes something I said. By talking to somebody who dislikes what I say, I can learn why they dislike it and try to avoid it in the future if possible. If I can't avoid it, well, then I can just be like, well, hey, what can I do as an alternative? So I miss out on an opportunity to learn why a person dislikes something when that happens, is more or less what I'm trying to say. That brings me into the next topic, and that's the forums. I don't know why, really, game developers, and for that matter, betas, continue to try to use the forums, because unless you get 1 like on that thread or post, it's going to get drowned out, because there's so many people trying to post that it just gets to the 2nd or 3rd page within an hour pretty easily. I think what could be done better is grouping people and then making it a prioritization algorithm. What I mean is this. Let's just say you've got three groups of people for a beta. Just as an example, I'm not saying that this is the case, but just as an example, right? You have your casual gamers, you have your esport players, and then you have your Twitch streamers. In the case of something like an arena shooter where it has a competitive element, then I would put a prioritization on what the esport players are saying. And then after that, the streamers. Why? It's because streamers nowadays do community days where they will spend the time to play with their community. And those are the people who have like little tournaments or something, and from there, maybe they'll have a little prize pool or something. You know, it really varies with person to person on the streaming platforms. But at the end of the day, it's a competitive element, I guess you can say. From there, then the casual should be at the bottom, because if the game's got a competitive element to it, that means the casual players aren't going to care for the competitive element. If that's a core element of the game, then they should be the last on the list of people to listen to. That's how I think you should handle it. With it being grouped, it should be easier to create forums specific to those groups. And from there, you can give those groups permissions to access those forums and keep them completely separate from the rest of the groups. That should make it easier to see the feedback, advice, or suggestions. Okay, now that I've gone through all of that, let's talk about something not community related, and that's going to be the weapons. This is really a problem of all games. It's not just going to be XDefiant, it's really all games. So I'm speaking in general terms again. But yeah, one of the biggest issues you can make for yourself is putting snipers in the game. I've pulled this up and I've had it up for a while for a reason. It's because the top 2 videos on this search result are, in my opinion, some of the better videos out there discussing the issue of snipers in games. It really does piss people off when you put instant kill snipers into a game where it's really fast paced. I get that there's going to be people, who want to do like that quick scope sniping. To them, it's a challenge and fun or whatever. But that's going to be more or less for games like Call of Duty. In that case, I think they really should have just made a mode separate for it, so the people who don't want to deal with that can completely avoid it. So if you want to create quick scoping for XDefiant or really any game, make it a separate mode. Really, because there's nothing more discouraging than an entire team of instant kill snipers in any game. Because you'll just pop your head out for a second, try to figure what's going on, and boom, dead instantly. No chance to react. So, yeah, that's really unfair. That's just going to be snipers, though. Let's talk about weapon variety in general, though. All games need to have variety, because if you ever go into a game with, like, let's just say 4 slow-firing LMGs and 2 fast-firing ARs, well, the 2 fast-firing ARs are usually going to be the ones that win because of their higher RPM. In all games, it should be, if it's a slower RPM, then that means it's a marksman-like weapon. It should reward you for accuracy and being on top of the target. Fast RPM guns should be for people who aren't exactly great at shooters, and it gives them the ability to recover from mistakes. That's more or less what they should be for. And so when you reach a point where the marksman-like weapons are doing what they're supposed to and they still can't win as consistently as it should for that particular purpose, then that's a problem. So I've pulled up a couple of examples here to kind of show that. Let's see. I hardly ever see the Negev in games, but the Negev is one of the few LMGs that attempted to make like a paratrooper type of version of the weapon. There is a version of the Negev that's got like, I think, a 13-inch barrel. So it's super short for an LMG, but nonetheless they made that. Now, even though that they've made this kind of like a paratrooper model, it's still going to be a little bit heavier than, say, something like the M27. The M27 was another attempt to make kind of like a squad automatic weapon, kind of like what the M249 is doing, but in a lighter platform and package. And let me pull over that article. There So in the last couple of years, they made a polymer magazine for it. D60 is its official name. You can see that right there. The Magpul D60 is supposed to have 60 rounds for the M27 IAR. So why I'm doing this? Well, it goes to show that you can have two weapons from two different purposes. One's a paratrooper weapon and one's more of just like a general purpose weapon, right? And you can still have them in the game, and they can both be fast firing. It's just that one's going to be faster on movement and ADS than the other. And that's just kind of like how you have to think about weapon variety when you do that. Because otherwise, if you do something like the example I just gave, then you're going to make it so that the ARs are going to be the dominant ones because of just their higher RPM. So, yeah, I think that's really just an issue of all games. But I think snipers are going to be more of an issue than the variety. I don't know why games continue to push that. So, yeah, I definitely have some concerns with that. Last thing I want to get to that's kind of like a general term. Let me just tab back. Is the realism factor. So I think there's certainly ways to balance snipers that would kind of dip into realism. I'm not saying go as far as like Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2, which is insane, in terms of applying that to MMO FPS. I think it would be insane to try to apply that, but I would at the very least use this as an example to say, hey, I would be okay with an instant kill weapon if this person had to really work for it, right? Because if this person has to, do elevation, wind, and distance and all that to get their instant kill, then I'm okay with that. Honestly, I am. And if I do something silly like sit in a spot for 10 minutes out in the open, then yeah, I can also accept that because it's my bad. I should not be doing silly crap like that, right? Which I don't, by the way, but I'm just using it as an example. So, if they can get through all of that just to kill me in the game, then so be it, right? But I do think you could take some basic steps, at the very least, to accomplish that goal. I gave an example in one of my prior recordings, but I mentioned XDefiant and how the machine guns needed to be on their bipod to be controllable. You could fire them standing up, but the recoil was insane. So I think you could apply something similar to the large caliber sniper rifles, make it so that they have to be crouched or proned to be fireable. Standing up though, I don't think that should be a thing, especially when you're talking about 50 cal and 3.3 Lapua snipers. But yeah, you could take basic steps like that, and that would for sure accomplish it without dipping into that super realism like Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2. That's kind of where I'm going with this, and I think that's something that games can learn from. Actually, one other thing too is skills. So, there's been numerous games that have tried the skill thing, like Valorant, where you have a mix of gunplay and skills. So all skills should have a counter to a degree. It shouldn't be like overwhelming counters, but it should be like if situation A happens, you should be able to find a counter to that, and from there you should be able to have a reasonable chance of winning. But when you have a game where you have something like, let's just say, for example, something that heals way too much and there's no anti-heal to kind of like reduce how much heal that they're getting per second, then yeah, then you've made that skill overwhelmingly too strong because now they just out-heal all the damage, and there's no point to, say, a tank character that has like a shield or whatever. Because at that point, why bother with a shield when you could just regenerate the damage, right? So, yeah, that's really going to be an issue with all games. Now, Valorant has certainly done a pretty good job of balancing out their skills, I think. I think there's certainly a few things that could be done differently, but it's not the only game where I've noticed that. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. But yeah, that's really all I can say on this for now. I really do hope that games in the future, not just Ubisoft, or, well, developers, I should say. I hope developers in the future, not just Ubisoft, but the others, they should really try to do a better job of listening to the community. They really should, because I should not be seeing a repeat of, say, snipers in every freaking game, for example. That's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.